Welcome to today's session on Databytes Enabling AI. And today's topic is going to be honest talk. Is AI actually making our lives and our work lives better or not? Today, we have someone who lives this topic on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis. And we are delighted to welcome Sandip Chatterjee, Chief Product Officer at MedRisk, and a seasoned executive with over 2 decades of experience at the intersection of product strategy, data, and business transformation across insurance and healthcare. So 2 vertical businesses that are extremely complex, that are in dire need of AI, with the actual components of AI like product strategy, data, and business transformation, where a lot of energy is spent today. In his role at MedRisk as a CPO, Sandip is responsible for enterprise product strategy, innovation, and revenue growth. So he leverages data, analytics, and AI as core enablers to drive better outcomes in care delivery and payment integrity, 2 of the hottest topics in the healthcare industry today. So thank you, Sandip. Really appreciate you making the time to talk to us and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, Rahul, again, really appreciate the time. And I know it has been a pleasure working with you before, and now I know we have kept in touch. So look forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Sandip, had I had this conversation with you last year, we would have started by saying, what is AI? What is agentic? Define it for me. But in today's world, I think everybody knows about especially what the buzzwords are and what they are about. But now, you in your recent pieces, and I'm going to dive right in, right? So in your recent pieces on LinkedIn, you wrote that AI was supposed to save time. This caught our attention quite a bit. And I think this is a very pertinent question that you've raised, and very pertinent perspective, right? But yet most of us feel busier than ever. Is that the reality you're seeing inside organizations today? Just help us understand this perspective.
I think everybody has a different perspective on this, but when I take a step back and look at some of these things, I believe that is exactly what I am seeing from my vantage point. So AI was, of course, supposed to help us do things, and it is successful in doing that. But what that has done is it has multiplied the optionality. So for example, if you're working with your team, you would say, hey, come up with a strategy for this piece, or think about this product and what is it that you can do. And of course, and you encourage the team to go ahead and use AI. And what happens as an output of that is they will create not one, but multiple drafts. And now you are responsible for sitting down with the team and kind of going through that and figuring out, hey, what is it that we should be adopting and moving forward with. So that by itself has created a lot more good options for you to consider. On top of that, everybody's going through this change, right? I think it's not that what we were doing earlier has stopped. We were doing all of that, and then leadership expects us for a faster turnaround. They want us to, take this AI into consideration and see what is it that we should be doing and how we should be doing it. So we as who are in this, living through this, feel that we are busier than ever. And I feel it's a good thing. I haven't been this excited about something for a long, long time, because I truly believe this is transformational for the industry, not only for my industry, but for a lot of other industries as well.
But you bring up 2 interesting points, right? So what you mentioned on the 2 points that I think are interesting is it has given you more options, because the teams are now able to go in and come up with quicker, better options than probably before, where they did a lot of digging, a lot of thinking, and it took a little bit more of cycle time. The second is the expectation from your leadership team, the CEOs, is get it done fast. Like, where is it? Why is it not done? Because the echo chamber that they are in is saying, hey, I can actually, everybody's doing it. It's fast. Why are you not doing it? What you did not bring up that was interesting for me was it is not a technical challenge that is making you busier. It's the other 2 parts of it, which is contextualizing, which is How do you communicate that, causing the incremental complexity? Tell me your reaction to that.
I truly believe that the models are getting better and it'll become easier and easier. So there is this whole piece of, okay, what models are there? How can they be used? Whether before this conversation, when we were just chatting, we talked about there is models from OpenAI, from Google, from Anthropic, from Microsoft, the Copilot version of it. They are all there. And that is something that still needs to be solved. But as a leader, I think you need to figure out, you need to really assign that to somebody to help you kind of navigate that piece itself. And I mean, Rahul, you bring up a good point. I think that work also needs to be done. It's not that it doesn't need to be done. It's just that it is sitting in a different area of the company who needs to continue working. And I'm sure the AI organization across different companies are feeling that pressure as well. But to be candid, I think the models are getting, every incremental, and the models are almost becoming, they are almost similar to one another, and they're making life easier. So I think that task will become easier over a period of time.
Let me double click on that part, the second part a little bit more, right? And again, two different trains of thoughts for me as well. So the first part is going to be the models are becoming easier, they're more accessible. Then it's a race to the bottom of what is pricing going to look like. But eventually, the competitive advantage is not in the model anymore as a thought, right? So it's not about whether you use Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, whatever you want to use, right? But that's not going to be the differentiator for you. And the second part is you got a team that is different, that's looking at this AI model while you're building the product construct, if you may, right?
Yeah, agreed.
How does this all fit together in your mindset, right? I mean, and what are some of the challenges? How are you approaching this conundrum? Because it's a very interesting conundrum. Third question, which is the models are changing very rapidly. So you're adopting, and can you create an adoption cycle that fits with the growth or the changes in the model, or how do you sort of manage to that as well, right? So I know the first two challenges that we talked about, the leadership, optionality, I think folks will understand, realize how to deal with it. But this technical challenge, I think, is going to be more interesting.
I think it's an interesting piece. What I would go back to the first principles thinking, right? I think AI is not a bolt-on, meaning if you have a model that you are going to use to do or get something done, whether it's summarization of a task, whether it's automation, whether you are building out the agents and all of that, it is not a bolt-on. I think the way, and I've been thinking about this quite a lot, and of course, getting a lot of sound bites from all over the podcasts that I listen to, is I think you really need to fundamentally change how you are going about doing your work. So what I mean by that is every company has, or every industry has, an operating system, right? What I mean by that is they, over a period of time, they are doing certain things and they have improved on that piece of whether it is the healthcare, insurance, financial, retail, and all of that. They have an operating system. With the advent of technology that came in and they said, okay, how can I use technology to do things better? How can I automate processes and so on and so forth? And we all lived through the robotic process automation, the RPA piece of it. I personally think that now we are at a junction where you really need to go back to the drawing board and think about your operating system. And your operating system has to be built assuming AI is an enabler. It is not AI comes at a later point of time. It has to be at the very beginning. So you have to really rethink all your processes over a period of time. And again, nothing needs to be done right away. We all know the power of compounding. And I think what would be helpful is for you to kind of really go back to first principle thinking and say, hey, assuming AI is here, assuming these models are, and we have to make an assumption that these models will get better in terms of its inference and capabilities as well as your research capabilities. So given all of those pieces, how do I redesign my workflows, my processes to do things better compared to what has been done in the last 5-10 years?
The way you've described it is you have to take a completely fresh look at the approach versus trying to say, I'm going to fit it into what I'm doing today, which makes a ton of sense, right? Now, we all live in the real world of what's the result or what's the ROI for the short term versus the long term. And I'm sure you get asked the same questions as everybody else, right? So it's the right answer is to take a blank slate, rebuild something from scratch that says, okay, now I'm going AI first. I'm actually rethinking everything. What I've seen, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, is it requires a lot of organizational effects, and it requires a lot of technical effects. And then it requires the financial assessment of what are you going to deliver in the short term that will show me value. And is it going to create change? And then what's in the future term, right? Because there's long term as definition is not 5 years. It's like after 3 months is a long term nowadays.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'd love to hear your reaction.
I think you touched a few different points, and I was thinking about like a few different areas that we can cover. Well, so let's take one. So let's talk about product. So in a product lifecycle, when you're building out a new product or you're starting off, let's say that you are a startup, you want to build up a new product. I think one of the things that you do is you cross what we call as a product chasm. And in order to cross product chasm, typically you would actually go deep instead of going broad. You're not trying to use AI everywhere. You're trying to use AI in, and AI is just an example, but I'm saying that you are trying to build your product portfolio that is deep, that solves a problem for your client base, for your customer base. Similar to that, I think we are at a point where we need to do the same thing. We can do it, but it doesn't really help. We have to go deep with AI. We have to pick up one process, just go deep in that, like really rethink that. And of course, there are a lot of leaders out there who see these problems on a day-to-day basis, and knowing what they know about AI, they need to kind of help hone in on that. So providing clarity to your team in terms of what needs to be done, what problem needs to be solved, will actually help you get to your ROI faster. The other piece that you also need to think through is, I think there is this, I assume this is not assume, like I say this is a myth that jobs will be replaced. I do not think jobs will be replaced. I think what will be replaced is tasks that somebody does will get replaced if it's a repetitive task, if it doesn't involve a lot of inferencing and things along those lines. Those will be replaced over a period of time. There are two studies that came out. One was from Goldman Sachs and the other one was from Anthropic in the last 2 weeks, that just talks about this piece where tasks will be replaced. I think Goldman Sachs says that about 25% of the tasks getting done will be automated over the next 5, 7, 10 years. And Anthropic is also coming up and saying that, hey, there is a distinction between what they call as the theoretical application of AI versus the actual practical application. And of course, there is always a gap between those two. But I think that's what we need to think through in terms of what tasks can we apply AI today. And it's not a bolt-on, it has to be a fundamental redesign. Rahul, I would flip that question back to you. I know you do a lot of good consulting work. What do you see at your end as it relates to this piece?
What you are hitting on is the right conundrum, right? So two things that you bring up. One is, which is one of the options, right? In product, building a product or building any of the workflows, you go deep or you go broad, right? And we see both. And the question always is coming back to the organization in terms of what is the intent of the leader. Is the intent to essentially rethink the whole workflow across business lines, or actually, show something that works and then replicate it across business lines? And I think there are technical challenges that companies have to overcome when you try to go broad. And there are leadership challenges that they have to overcome, because what we see is, thanks for flipping the question, by the way, the org structure is going to be very different than it is today, because you brought up the second point, right? 25% of the tasks are going to go away. So what does it mean for the people? In today's world, if 75%, if I say I need only 75% of my time, does that mean I'm going to train myself in doing something different? What does that mean to me as an individual contributor or as a manager or as a leader? How is my work life going to be different? And I think there is this whole role called Chief AI Officer that's being talked about. And I feel like that's a very, very short-term role, because when I go into the organization, everybody feels like they are the AI officer. So and I think that's the right approach, right? Because if you are even an HR person or an ops person or a product person, like, you need to embrace AI for yourself. Otherwise, how are you going to show the 25% at least productivity benefit? Let's not assume that it's a people benefit, but productivity benefit. So it's a very interesting time that we are living in, and a lot of confusion, complexity around what the first step is. And that's the reason I keep sort of, trying to figure out what is the first step, right? Like, there are lots of steps, but what is the first step where you can start showing some value? And that's where I think the complexity and confusion is even more.
I think every industry is different, right? Again, if it's a product, it's a different approach versus if it's an entire company, it's a different approach. I like your idea about like going horizontal, but whatever you do, you have to do it well, in the sense that, let's say that you want all your team members to start using summarization and all of the cool features from AI. But how do you make sure that everybody in the company is doing it? And then the question becomes, how are you measuring that? And what is the ROI that you can calculate? I mean, is there an easy way to calculate the ROI from this approach? And I think that becomes very difficult, because it's difficult to kind of say, hey, today, like, unless it's the job involves that specific task, it becomes difficult for you to calculate the ROI, saying that I used AI 13 times today or whatever, like 20 times today, and it helped me write a better email or summarize this information that was from an email thread. But how did I become more productive in the process? Like, is that investment really giving me returns?
And I wish, one of these models will actually do that for you, so that they can say, hey, this is the productivity gain that I have.
I completely agree. And we have seen that, like you said, the timeline is really compressed at this point of time, and it's really moving fast. If you talk about 6 months back, we were talking about, okay, AI as an assist. And a lot of, you were using AI to do a lot of the assist. I mean, that hasn't gone away. But I think AI, the agents have moved to a space where it's actually doing the analysis, making really good recommendations, not just summarizing it, making recommendations, and you are overseeing it. Our roles are also morphing over a period of time, right? I think initially we were people who used to decide. Now we are the people who are just overseeing, did the agent do what it was supposed to be doing? So, and I'm sure that's going to change in the future as well.
This is a great conversation. Now, look, you are a part of an industry which is highly governed and a lot of compliance, sort of guardrails on it. How are you tackling those as you embrace AI? Because the explainability of results is a little less in AI than in some of the traditional models. So how are you approaching this?
The way I see this happening is, of course, you will be picking up use cases that help you reduce cycle time. It will help you improve the quality of the decisions that you are making, or it may eliminate a complete task by itself. So those are some of the ways you would actually figure out, like, how do I use AI in a specific scenario? But what is also important is you need to put it within a framework where you are looking at consistency of the decision making. You are looking at traceability of the decision making. You are also looking at the predictability of the decision making. And last but not the least is the auditability, right? I think those are critical factors both for insurance and healthcare. So, and I think this will change over a period of time. So now you need to kind of look at simpler use cases where, at least my frame of thinking has been simple, and it is, it's not a new way of thinking. It's just like the same thing that used to be applied earlier applies now. If it's an irreversible decision, whether it is, let's say you're denying a claim or you're making a call on a treatment that, you are saying that, okay, go ahead and do this, different from what you were doing earlier. Those are, I would say, you need to have the human in the loop, and you have to think about it more critically compared to, hey, I need to respond back to this email and just draft me a response and then maybe send out that response saying that, in the world of workers' comp, one of the things that injured workers are always interested in, they're asking for is, hey, am I going to get, was the check issued for the payment for the indemnity piece of the claim itself? And the AI can easily go in and take a look at the system and process that. There is no reason why a human needs to be in the loop. So that's actually making it a little bit more real. But what I would say is, I think you need to kind of think about that framework. If it's a reversible decision, then sure, you can go ahead and have AI do some of the stuff. But if it's an irreversible decision, I think human involvement has to be more in there compared to the prior one.
That's a great sort of way to distinguish, right? And reversible versus irreversible. And in some cases, the line is driven by the type of coverage, the type of incidents that you're seeing. I'm gonna put you in a spot a little bit, but you can feel free not to answer. But Medicare has been in the news recently for a lot of wrong reasons in using AI-driven model to deny coverage. Right now, you got people. The models were built using AI data that was on seniors, and of course they're going to have conditions that are more and more requiring attention. So one of the interesting incidences has been that because it requires more investigation, it takes more time, and it just takes a lot longer, right? So instead of providing coverage and providing dollars right away, it's actually taking a lot longer. Where AI should have actually brought the timeline down, it's actually increasing the time. I think this has been a topic on the news media quite a bit, right? Because it's been sort of one of those conundrums where what should we be doing? And it's, we've built models in the past. It's based on data. Yeah, if you're going to go to a hospital and stay for 30 days, yes, I need more information, but I can't be completely just pushed into the back end, right?
I would say I'm not privy to that specific topic, and I really do not know the inner workings of the topic, because we know that healthcare is not it's a fairly complicated field. However, if you want to take a step back and talk about it, I don't want to call it theoretically, but if you just want to brainstorm on this topic, I think what is really needed is you need a good data model in place. And so that's number one. The data model can be used for making, pre-authorization decisions that was being made by humans earlier. And I'm not saying that, humans shouldn't be in the loop on that. All I'm saying is you need a good data model in place. And so that's number one. Number two, AI is, especially the frontier models are capable of working with unclean data, non-clean data, right? I think they have more, I would say they are more forgiving than the earlier models that we had built over the last 10, 15 years. So that's number two. And number three is, we have to have a human in the loop. And I understand that, again, this is not specific to any one company, but there may be certain companies who may be over relying on one versus the other. And that's the trigger for all the sound bites in the news. And I think this is why it is very important for us to really go back to the first principle saying that, hey, is this something that we should be using AI or we shouldn't be using AI? And I'm sure there are companies who are doing it more responsibly than others. And, hopefully the companies, the decisions that were made that affected certain seniors and things along those lines will be corrected along the way.
I think if the context is missing in setting up the data, I think you're going to have a bigger challenge. The data is going to sort of, I think the model was accurate. It's just that it needed more context to say that, look, these are seniors and don't treat them badly. And that's where a human in the loop in leveraging AI agents is more important than just letting them go wild. And that goes back to your earlier comment. We are busier because I think it's like you got a lot of tools in your toolkit. Which tool to deploy where, and how to get a scalpel versus a hammer is something that we got to keep thinking about, right?
So just one quick point on that. Both in healthcare and insurance, I think trust is key. Us being able to make sure that the decisions that are being made, whether it is AI led or whether it is AI assisted, have to be make sure that it's the right decision. Because if you lose that, then it really doesn't matter whether it's slow or faster and things along those lines. So we need to make sure that people trust the decisions that are being made.
And it's got to be more and more interesting, right? So, hey, I'm going to, sort of start transitioning from today to tomorrow, but let's ask you the today question and then the tomorrow question. There is a lot of usage of AI agents and in insurance, in healthcare. Do you have like a guiding principle of here are the first few places where, you should use these agents or deploy them? And then when do we know that we are transitioned into the future? What do you see the future to be? What is like, and when does that happen? What do you think will happen to these industries? And
Rahul, you bring up a good point, and it's a good question, and it's a natural segue. We just talked about the fact that, where should we use AI? So just to, I would say, recap that, what I would say is, especially in healthcare and insurance, and again, every company is different, so I cannot just come and say that, hey, this is where you need to use. You really need to think about your own company and its unique setup to make that decision. But the framework should be, there are two dimensions. There is a reversibility dimension and then there is a risk dimension, right? If it's low risk, if the outcome is reversible, and there is strong historical precedent, go ahead and use AI. Deploy, of course, test it and deploy it and use it going forward. Humans have to be in the loop where there is ambiguity because data is not clean. Unless you have a good data model in place, you have to have humans in the loop. Or it's an ethical judgment scenario where you need to kind of really think through that a little bit more than what you have been doing. Or the cost of being wrong is really high, like denying a claim for no reason or I shouldn't say no reason. There is always a reason why you deny a claim. But if the data point that is getting used is either incomplete, incorrect, or it is I think those two things, incomplete or incorrect, then the cost is high, and where accountability matters. I would say that's the framework that you should think about. The exciting piece of all of this is the models are getting better. Every iteration of the model, compared to even the OpenAI models from last year to this year, from 5.3 to 5.4, is like it's a step change in terms of the outputs itself. And I see that you need to kind of go back and really start rethinking about your operating system and how do you go about really rebuilding your operating system one block at a time. And the good news is like everybody is in the same boat. It's not that you are, if you don't start today and if you don't do anything for the next 3 years, you will be left behind, or in the next 6 months. But everybody is exploring it. Everybody is trying to understand it and trying to do the best job that they can of what is available today.
You are bringing up all the right points. And Sam Altman in one of the recent interviews said, every time I do a new release, about 1,000 small businesses go out of business and 1,000 new start to come into business, right? Because all the models are a step change from the prior iteration. And what you said makes a ton of sense. I think it's difficult to draw the line between the inaccuracy of a model and incorrect inputs, right? It's very difficult because the model is 95% accurate, but how do you know which 5% to kick out accurately? And
exactly.
that is, from a model data perspective, it's great. But when you're at the point of decision making, it's very difficult to figure out, hey, this could be a potential error. And especially in healthcare and in insurance, the cost of a mistake is very high because you're dealing with people getting, like in this Medicare example, the delayed payments relates to delayed care, and who knows? It's a very tough situation to be in, right? So we do live in I would call it an AI transition era. I think everybody has started doing something, but I'm very curious to flip it back to you and ask you, what's the future? What do you see? How will we know that, we've really transitioned? What is the future going to look like in the next year, 2 years, 3 years?
The way I would think about doing this is, I think there is a set of companies who will always treat AI as an incremental improvement opportunity. And these companies will realize anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 or maybe 30% improvement. But the companies who really go back to the drawing board and ask the question, hey, if AI existed when I was redesigning my processes, how would I build it? I think those companies would be really ahead. So this is really a difference between incremental versus transformational. Again, I know we have used these words in other contexts across our work time over the last 15, 20, 30 years. But in order for companies to be transformational, they really need to start thinking more holistically about applying AI. I think so that is one piece. And the other thing that I would also like to highlight is, don't treat AI as a tool. Treat AI as, I keep coming back at the operating model itself. I think those are the ways you will be ahead compared to where you are today. But again, fundamentally, you have to go back and make sure that you have a strong data model. If you do not have one, just invest the time, invest the energy, invest your dollars to be able to do that, and encourage people. And the other thing is, I know I wrote an article on this a few weeks back. This was, again, you want to measure AI usage, but at the same time, you need to kind of bring people along the process itself. So that's a different aspect of all of this. So a good example of that would be, you will always have people who are within a company who are experimenting with AI. They are building out agents. They are building out new ways of doing things with AI. But that is only helping that one person. But if you really want the company to make progress, you need to think through, how do I take that specific thing and make it available across all the team members who are doing similar tasks. I think so. It's a little bit more philosophical in nature, but I think you need to start thinking about that and investing in that, because you as a company will not you cannot transform yourself just because one person is doing it. You will transform yourself if everybody in the company is thinking about it and doing things that you are supposed to be doing.
So what happens once everybody's there?
Again, there are two aspects to that conversation. Number one is, I think, I don't know if you heard, but Jensen Huang, as part of his GTC conference, just talked about this. And I think you mentioned there's 1,000 companies getting destroyed and 1,000 new companies coming along. So I think one is, things will become more efficient, right? For sure. And the second piece, which is more important, is there are a lot of things that we don't do today that can be done. I think, and again, I'm not the person who will sit here and pontificate on what are all those different things, but because every company is different, you will have opportunities that you haven't been able to tackle that you will be able to tackle, like personalized health is a good example. I mean, we have talked about it in concept for a long time, but personalized health, it exists in some form or shape, but it really doesn't exist at a level that it should exist with AI. So similarly, insurance, like all of these, when you get an insurance policy, of course, they are trying to kind of underwrite that insurance based on your profile. But I think it'll become more and more, it'll be more and more personalized to you as a person, Rahul as a person, and what kind of insurance is needed. And maybe there will be more insurance products that will come out as a result of which, because you can underwrite better, you can quantify the risk better, you can handle those claims better that were not being done. So I really see this as the number of insurance products that's available in the marketplace overall should exponentially go up. Similarly, the healthcare options should exponentially go up. That's the world that we will live in the future, that we are not here today. And think about it. If you think about that specific world, there is not enough people to do that work today. There never has been, and you need AI, you need robots to be able to do that going forward.
That's a very brilliant point that you bring up, right? And I can imagine the world in that sense, like, insurance product built for me, for my lifestyle, for my behavior versus for someone else's, which might also mean that I might need my own AI agent to evaluate all the different options and come back with something that is personalized and useful for me, right? And I'm sure I can imagine a world like that. And I think the second point you brought up is even more powerful, which is in a company, there is always priorities, and you can barely get beyond priority number 3. And hopefully because of this, you're probably getting to priority number 10 and then 50 and then 100, right? And suddenly things will be different. And
exactly.
I can believe in that. So that's a very, very powerful perspective as well. Hey, so this is going to come down to the final question. I mean, we all have kids coming up in college or going to college and graduating from college. And this is a tough time for them, right? So when I look at the job boards and openings, the openings are less and they're more for experienced folks than for college grads. So what advice would you give to them, and how should they shape up what they're doing today to be ready?
Rahul, that's a tough one, but at the same time, I have wrestled with that question even in my household. One of my older daughter is going to college this year, and how do you prep her? Because college will do certain things, but will she be really ready after 4 years to go join the workforce? And what is it that she would need to do differently? I think number one, I truly believe we as humans are very adaptable to change. So don't underestimate what you can do given a certain kind of setup. So you just need to make sure that your child, your kids are prepared for that. Their ability to learn, ability to change, ability to adapt is super, super important. Again, to be candid, I really don't know what the world is going to look like in the next 3 years or next 4 years, where AI will be used, where AI will not be used. But your ability to be able to say that, hey, if I see a certain use case and I can, if that use case is using AI and that in turn actually results in a better outcome, I should invest in that. You shouldn't just stay away from that. So that's number one. The other thing that I'm also thinking is important is, I'm a big fan of Naval Ravikant, and I had heard him almost 10 years back, maybe a little less. He talked about the power of compounding. Elon Musk has also talked about the power of compounding. And what I truly believe is, if you do a little every day, 3 months from now, you will be much better off than where you are today. So just invest the time, invest your effort, learn a little bit more about AI. Think one thing that you can do with AI that you're not doing today, and how can you just enable that use case in your life. So I would say those are the two things. Now, number one is like just be open to change, and the other thing is like invest the time in learning and getting more educated about it, so that when the time comes, you are ready to kind of jump in and do what you are supposed to be doing.
Very important advice, and I think every student should hear it, because if you try to imagine the end state, the first step becomes impossible to take. But I think what you're saying is take the first step, invest a little every day. The power of compounding is fascinating and true. And the fact that we are as human beings adaptable to change. I mean, we had the industrial revolution, we had the internet boom, we have, now we've dealt with a couple of recessions, and now we have the AI revolution. So I think this was very, very fascinating, and you brought in philosophy along with real life experience that actually made it even more interesting and powerful. Any other piece of advice? Any last parting thoughts?
Last advice is to all those who are listening is to start small but go deep. Go back to first principles thinking.
I think you brought this whole, is AI better for us or not, painted a great picture. We talked a lot about the different ways that we should think about AI interjection at different points. The most important, interesting thing that I thought was the operating model, how the organization should operate is where the infusion of AI becomes most interesting. And the final thoughts were, the philosophy plus the practical application. It's perfect. No, really appreciate you spending the time, Sandip. We'll hopefully do this more and more, and a lot of folks should benefit from this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, Rahul. Really appreciate it. It has been a great conversation.